to apologize, they make an excuse, and they don't take ownership. And so I must practice what I preach, and so I'm going to take ownership for a late start today. I called Dr. Collins and had a little appointment with him before we started, and so the reason they weren't in here earlier to work out a few little kinks is because I had him tied up. So it's all my fault, it's not his fault, okay? Just want you to know that. Is anybody here for the first time? Okay, we got some first time. If you need the facilities, down the hall on the right. Should take care of what you need. And I'll be here in the back, and anything I can do to make things go well for you, just let me know. That having been said, I just want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. I pray that your time with Dr. Collins will be the blessing that my little private appointment with him was the last hour. He really has given me a new lease on some things, so I'm excited. That having been said, let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are the God of the universe. You are the God of our lives. And we pray, Lord, that as Dr. Collins presents today, that you will help us not only assimilate the knowledge, but help us hear personally the message that you want us to hear, that we might be better prepared to live clean, healthy lives from this day forward is our prayer. Thank you for being with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good afternoon. We'll just have to talk a little faster to make up for those 5 minutes. How's that? Our topic this afternoon is cancer prevention. If you never get cancer, then I would say you prevented it. Or if you go to a doctor and he says there's nothing wrong with you, you should be very pleased. You didn't waste your money. What you don't want to hear is all these terrible things they usually tell you, right? And then they want to do this scan and that scan. So preventive medicine is hard to evaluate, except when you live your whole life and you die of old age, whatever that means, or you don't wake up in the morning and you go, well, they don't have to worry about me having tubes stuck everywhere and spending the last 2 months with doctors more than my spouse and things like this. That's not very good quality of life. So what we're going to talk about this afternoon is how you prevent cancer. Because we realize that once a person has cancer, you obviously can't prevent it. I know that seems very basic in your logic, but the point is that the best way to deal with our medical issues that we have in this country is don't have them. It's like the legal system. They tell you you're innocent until proven guilty. Well, I've never felt that way when I was talking to the judge. I don't know about how you felt, and I try to avoid talking to the judge as much as I can. In the medical field, it's the opposite. They assume that there's something deadly happening to you until we prove that you're not. And after 5 hours in the emergency room and a $5,000 bill, you go, I think I've had enough of this proving. In fact, my bank account can't handle any more of this proving for one day either. So, we're trying to get a jump on it here. What I'm going to be presenting in this first hour is the causes, and in the second hour, and they'll have a handout at that point in time, to look at what the research is saying on how you prevent it. So we're going to learn on cause, and hopefully we're going to learn by, so to speak, effect. Well, hopefully you've read this already, but it bears repeating. In order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. He who created man and who understands his needs appointed Adam his food. Grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. I believe that God created the human race, and therefore the Creator knows more about this body, and I'm planning to ask a few questions. Because God has all the answers, and I would like to ask a few questions when I get there to be able to talk with Him and ask Him why He did it this way, and why did He make it that way, and why did He put my air pipe in front of my swallowing pipe because all my food has got to go over the air pipe. You know, why'd you do that? I mean, there's obviously a lot of good reasons, and I just need to figure out, because I'm definitely not the creator. Our dollars are spent on a very small group of our population. What this chart is, and I can't make it any darker for you because we got the lights out here in the front, is the top 1%. In other words, 99% of the people are below this, 1%, the top 1% users of medical care in our country use 22% of the medical budget. So we got 1% of the people using 22% of the whole budget. Now let's take the next step. The top 5% of people in America are using 50% of every dollar spent in America for health care. That should shake you up, folks, because that means we have 95% of the people putting money into taking care of the 5%. Now, I'm not against taking care of people. That's what I've spent my whole career doing. That is not the point here. The point is that we have major problems that we're not addressing in a very small group of people. And I happen to believe, and when I do various wellness programs, one I did at the hospital that I'm close to, and we would reward people for their health habits. I think that insurance companies should start paying you to be healthy. No one's bought that yet. Where I would do a wellness program in industry, I get some takers. At the hospital that I work next to, we had 8 criteria we used that were health criteria that they could all modify. We didn't deal with genes. We didn't deal with things you couldn't change. We dealt with modifiable risk factors, and we paid them $5 per risk factor per month. And that was good for them and their spouse. And if you do the math real quick, you're going to find out that's going to be close to $1,000 a year if they took better care of themselves as compared to not taking better care of yourself. Initially, you go $5 times 8, that's $40. For me and my spouse, that's $80 a month times 12 months. You go, is that worth giving up my cheeseburger? I don't know. But if you look at it for the whole year, you go, $1,000 can make a difference. I happen to believe that if you choose to have poor health habits, that you should pay more for your health cost. I think it's just totally logical. And if you have good health habits, I think you should pay little to none for your health. And if you get so healthy you don't need to see a doctor, I think you should get compensated by your government a couple $1,000s a year. What do you think of that plan? See, I got the people here who are healthy. Why don't you bring all your neighbors that need to hear this? You see my point. We have got an upside-down medical system, and it's not going to get better. That's our problem. So that's why I spend my time talking, because I have to come to you and bring you the evidence, and if you see the evidence the way I do, you go, I'm willing to put my heart, my life, I can put it behind it. As you go down the list, the top 10% of the people take 64% of the budget. The top 20% of the people take 80% of the medical budget. So 20% of the people take almost the whole budget. That means 80% of the people don't. But 80% of the people are billed for the whole budget. That's where I think we've got a problem. Because until we connect dollars with health, it's not going to work in our country. Dollars speak. When it takes something out of your back pocket, it changes. Now, don't believe that they did it right in New York City, where they charge you 3 times as much, or they put you in jail because you got a 16-ounce Coke instead of an 8-ounce Coke. I don't think we need to do that to people. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But the laws they put in place is not the way you handle this. The way you handle this is having people pay their fair share. That's what I believe is fair. Now, you go to the top and it says the bottom 50% takes 3% of the total. So 50% of Americans consume 3% of what we spend on medical care. The other 50% take the remainder, 97%. A little bit different slide. We're not going to take time on that, but it shows you. We want to look at some demographics, World War I, and now we look back and we go, I could have done that. I could have been the health officer for the country of Denmark at that time. This isn't too brainy. Well, have you seen the date down here? Journal of American Medical Association, 1920. So you can see that Journal of American Medical Association has been out for a while. Very few of you in this room were alive in 1920. In fact, I'm willing to say, from looking at your faces, I don't think I have any takers here in this room. So, what did they do? During World War I, they had the Allied blockade. They're obviously in war, and they said, we cannot afford to have animals to eat. We just can't afford it. Because I got to feed the animal 10 times the food that I get from the animals, and I've got people starving. So animals, I'm sorry, we're not going to use you to process our food anymore. And so Dr. Heinheild's plan said, we're going to stop feeding the nation's grain to livestock, and we're going to feed the grain to the people. You go, well, that's brilliant. Well, when you start doing the math and your homework, you find that we don't have a food shortage in this world. We have enough food to feed all 7+ billion people now. You know what we have a food excess of? If everyone in this world would not use animal products, we can feed the world easily. There's no need for starvation. By the way, you get rid of half the hospitals while you're at it. So we had this mass vegetarian experiment on 3 million people. Can you imagine a whole country with only 3 million people in? That sounds like Brooklyn. One of our cities has that kind of population. Decrease the death rate calculated from October 1917 to October 1918. In 1 year, the death rate in this country went down 34%. In 1 year. Incredible. And of course, they said it went down from the preceding 18 years. So what does that tell you? They only started taking statistics from 1900, and this happened to be 1918. So we don't have it before that. But a 34% drop in that 1 year is absolutely incredible. You think that can happen in America? It can. Now, the question is, will it happen in America is the harder question. But it definitely can happen in America because those people that lived in Denmark may have been your ancestors. You're not that much different than the study I'm showing you. I realize it's 100 years later, but that's not it. Nature's laws. If men today were simple in their habits, living in harmony with nature's laws, as Adam and Eve in the beginning, there would be an abundant supply of the needs for the human family, but selfishness and indulgence of appetite have brought sin and misery from excess on the one hand and want on the other. Here's the hard, heart-wrenching truth. There is no need for anyone to be starving, and there's a whole great need for a whole lot less sickness and cancer in our world around us. So as I go through this presentation, keep that in mind, that what we're talking about, number one, is possible, and if it can happen for you and your refrigerator and your pantry, etc., etc. Norway, World War II. Why am I picking on wars? Because during wartime, you get research that you can never afford to get any other time. There's many people who are willing to change their life during wartime that they would never change their life from any other time. What did we do? And some of you did live through this. How many of you had a victory garden or know that your mom or your dad had victory gardens? You ever hear that terminology? Yeah. People who would never raise a garden. They would turn their front yard, probably their backyard, in town into their garden. And of course, we talk about grow boxes now, and we're a little more creative, but the point was that people do things when they believe the cause is valid. So here's what I'm saying. I think your cause is valid. I think your health is valid. I think you have the best cause to make your own changes. During German occupation, the Norwegian government was forced to sharply reduce, in some cases completely eliminate, the availability of meat to the citizens. What happened? age-related death rate per 10,000 population. So what was the death rate? What happened when they put their plan in place? Something really amazing. Those people that were 80 years of age or older, the ones you say, how can they get healthier? They're 80 years old. They can't change. You can't teach an old dog, not that I'm calling people dogs, you can't teach an old dog new tricks and all this stuff we feed our brains. Well, let me ask you a question. Those of you in this room that are 80, when you got to 80, did you think that you wanted to be 81? No, let's be fair. When do you get old? You never get old. It is all relative. If you're 80, you want 81. If you're 82, what do you want? 83. So don't give up on it. I learned this young in my practice. I had a 95-year-old man that came to see me. They wanted to get healthy. I was a young start, 26 years old, right out of school. And I go, wait a minute, why should I treat him any different than I would treat anyone else? I said, that's been my theory for my whole career. And he was pleased. Got himself on a good program, changed his diet, he was walking every day, and he was just really pleased at what I had done for him, going, don't underestimate. The 80-year-old age group, the death rate was 200 per 10,000, and it dropped all the way down to approximately 100 in about a 7 or 8 year period of time. Even the group that you would expect to have the most death rate dropped in half. The 60 to 79-year-old age group went from 25 down to 5, a 500% reduction. 40 to 59 age group went from, at a peak here, of about 1.2 down to 0.1, about a 1,200% decrease. Every single group, every single person in that group dropped significantly, no matter what the age was. Now, we're not going, obviously our talk is on cancer, but they took just circulatory diseases here, and they wanted to show you a radical drop, and well, we might as well show it because it does apply to cancer. By the way, you don't treat cancer different than you treat heart disease. See, that's the problem with our medical community. We treat one disease this way, we treat another disease this way, we treat another this way. Can I tell you something? If you're on the right treatment, you treat all diseases at once. Now you know my bias, don't you? I'm a lifestyle person. That's preventive medicine. You don't treat people different because the same treatment should take care of your blood. Maybe some of you are here for my lecture I gave 4 lectures back. I called it the anti-inflammatory diet, or how you decrease inflammation. And I demonstrated that day that every disease is caused by inflammation. So when you find the doctor in probably 2 days, if you want to just about 23. But look at the fat consumption. So we've learned one of our major factors in what we're doing. This is kilograms per person per year. So they're eating approximately 17 kilograms before the war started. And as the war progressed and Germany was invading their country, the fat consumption dropped to about 10. And you see the rest of the chart, don't you? The painful truth is after the war, what happened? Just give me French fries, please. No, we think, I'm going through the war, I'm willing to sacrifice, but when this war is over, I want the biggest steak I can get my hands on. You know what that proves? We haven't learned anything. That's what it proves. And I'm hoping as a result today that that won't be your testimony. The most common cancers, and we'll be dealing with these are the biggies, but they can be narrowed down very quickly. This is deaths now, death rate. Skin cancer is obviously the most common and the most prevalent and the highest number, but skin cancer is rarely deadly. So these are deaths. Lung is number 1 for male and female. If you don't smoke, you can just mark that one off. Only 10% of people who don't smoke get lung cancer. 90% of lung cancer is in those people who smoke. So the likelihood of getting lung cancer and not smoking, unfortunately, does happen, but it's rare. Number 2 in men is colon cancer, and number 2 in female is breast, and then prostate is 3 in male, and colon. So if you're on a high-fiber, plant-based diet, you can mark this one out and this one out. So men, we're going to be spending our time on prostate, and ladies, we're going to talk more about that. The experts tell us that the lifestyle control of cancer is about 80%, they figure right now. That means 80% of all cancers in our country are due to something I'm doing to myself. They don't rule out genetics. They don't rule out congenital things. I'm talking about something that you and I do. Some of the common cancers may be related to inadequate oxidation of vital tissues due to atherosclerosis. It's intriguing that cancers of the breast, prostate, and colon are mainly found in societies afflicted with cardiovascular disease. If you have cardiovascular disease, you can expect cancer. If you find cancer, you'll find cardiovascular disease. It's hand in hand. So if you see two things happening at the same time, at the same place, you should conclude that they must have something in common, or there must be a common cause. By the way, this is Dr. Merrick, Journal of American Medical Association. Have you seen something yet? I'm just giving you quotes from medical journals. So every doctor that you meet has the same opportunity I have to read this exact stuff. Has any doctor ever sat you down and said, here's what you're doing? Not likely. Cancer's on the rise. Cancer deaths are now, this chart needs to keep continuing. We're over 600, getting close to 650,000 people a year aren't getting cancer, are dying from cancer. Do you notice that this curve is continually going up? I read a report from the American Cancer Society this morning, and I smiled because they weren't telling the truth. They were talking about we've had a 45% decrease in this cancer and so much decrease in this cancer. I'm going, where are you getting your numbers from? Because I don't see that in mine. Then I read the source. It said, this was the medical director for the American Cancer Society. I'm going, well, you should be giving out good data, but there's something wrong with the data we're seeing. Age-adjusted cancer rates, this is males, by site, 1930 to 2005. You can see what's happened to lung, and lung happens to be on the decline. It takes about 20 to 30 years. So the people that stopped smoking in 1980 and 1985 were seeing the residual effect or the long-term effect of a decrease in lung cancer now. Right now, the American adult, not young people, the American adult population is smoking less than probably in the last 50 years. That message is getting out. I'm very thankful. Unfortunately, we're getting a lot of replacement smokers for the ones that are dying. And unfortunately, they're young. If you look at stomach cancer, that's probably been the best success rate and it going down. And there's various theories on stomach cancer and why it's going down, but it may have more to do with the sanitation than anything else. If you look at this one right here, this is colon. You can see it's relatively flat. Pancreas is going down. Let's take a look at age adjusted for females. You notice that in 1970, their lung cancer rates started going up. Females started smoking a lot more in the 1950s. Like I said, it takes 20 to 30 years. You see it going up. Breast cancer is going down slightly. Uterine cancer, you see, it's going in that direction. Here's the slide. It should make all the difference to you. We always talk total numbers. I tell you that 638,000 people are dying last year of cancer. By the way, that's not lying. That is the truth. But look at the data. This will change your thinking. We're two groups of people here. 1950, what was the data? 2005, what was the data? Well, the first question you should ask me is how many people lived in the United States in 1950? About 150 million. How many people live in the United States now? About 330 million. So let's just say we got twice the population. So if I have twice the population, what would you expect if the disease rates were staying the same? Twice as much. Let's look at the data. Heart disease, 1950, the rate was 586.8 people per the population back then. See, if you don't have it per group, we can get all kinds of numbers and get ourselves confused. So let's use the same number. We're going by population because it's going to make more sense. So you're going to shoot up twice as people. Now look, in 2005, I have 211 people dying from heart disease per 100,000 population in 2005. So what should that tell you? Heart disease, death rate from heart disease is dropped off significantly. It's gone from almost 600 down to a little bit over 200. That is incredible. But when I show you the total numbers, because I've got more population now, I have about the same number of people dying. So it makes us look like we haven't had any success. Let's look at cerebrovascular. We're talking about strokes. 180 per 100,000 and down to 46. Would you call that an improvement? I would too. Let's go to influenza and pneumonia. 48 down to 20, about a little more than half. Do you see cancer? Now you know why I'm talking about cancer. Every other major disease process has decreased except for one. 1950, 2005. It's the same rate. We have the same rate, basically, getting cancer as we did in 1950 versus 2005. What does that tell you? What have we done for cancer since 1950? Yeah, that's a good answer, not much. But no, really, what have we done medically? We've chemoed people, we've radiated people, we've surgeried people, we have done early detection, that's cost billions. You start going through the whole list of the war on cancer since 1950, and we come up with what? That's why I need to talk to you. Because I have to admit that the medical community in this area has done dismal. We haven't done too well. And the data speak for it. I didn't make this up. This is what it is. It's shocking because what we look at is the total numbers. What we should look at is how many people do I have in a population and how many people are having the problem. Hope this makes sense. Right now, my cancer rate for everything I've done in 55 years has pretty much not changed. Now, do you want to know why 1% spend 22% of the budget and why 5% of our population spend 49, almost 50% of the budget? I'll try not to get too upset, okay? We are bankrupting our country because that shot of chemotherapy that you just got is a $10,000 shot. Talked to a man yesterday. He says, I held this shot in my hand that they were going to give my wife. I think he said $7,500. He says, I was scared if I drop, just don't do anything. There is no way in this world that there's $7,500, even if that was pure platinum. By the way, don't inject that, okay? But I'm trying to tell you the most valuable thing is no way. So now you know that we have been duped into believing these high prices that aren't delivering the goods. U.S. mortality rates for 1991, we're looking at Adventist health study data, people in California compared to the general population. So, a heart attack and the type of menu they use, the meat-eating group Of the Seventh-day Adventists studied in California, the meat-eating group had 56% of the death rate of the general population. Was it better? Yeah. If it was 100%, it would be exactly the same. So that would come down to the lacto-ovo group, 39%. The vegans had 14% of the heart attack rate, where the general population had 100%. But look at this category over here. Percent of deaths, the meat-eating group, 42%, the lacto-ovo, lacto milk and eggs group, 32%, and the vegans, 3 or 4%. You know, there's no zeros up there, I realize that. But the reason I show you this slide is because I picked my own disease. I don't like that sometimes. I wish I could eat certain things or don't eat certain things. On the other hand, I have to admit to myself that I picked my own disease. You don't get to pick your parents, that's your genetics, but you do get to pick most other things in your life. Breast cancer, really simple or really complex. Did you notice the dates on this slide, 1944 to 1966? Just because it's old data doesn't mean it's bad data. They didn't do bad research back in the 1940s and 50s, and all of a sudden they got to the 1990s and the research was so incredible. In fact, I'll tell you the opposite. This is less likely to be tainted with political money than the present studies you're reading, if you really want to know the truth. This is less adulterated research. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's less accurate. So what do we have? Well, and low incidence of deaths, more red meat per capita restaurant. Japan, Thailand, Mexico, Venezuela, Portugal, you keep going up the list, and finally you get to the United States and Canada. The highest fat intake and the highest breast cancer rate. We think there's a correlation. I'm beyond thinking. I know there's a correlation. A little different slide, a few more countries. And the way they rank these countries, they didn't ask them what an ounce is about 30, 28 point something. So United Kingdom, England, right here, etc., you find that the quantity of fat they eat, and they almost draw a straight line through these countries, and you will find that the oil that they use in Italy is dominant something that you think is a sacred cow. It's called olive oil. The healthy fat. Well, let's face the fact. It's healthier than lard. But why do you want to compare it to something that is actually known carcinogen? You see what I'm getting at here? This is a dose relationship. The more fat you eat, the more fat I eat, the more likely I am to get cancer. And it doesn't matter what the source is. That's the take-home message. It's quantity we're dealing with here. Lifetime of estrogen levels are affected by diet. We realize that breast cancer has a hormonal component. The higher the estrogen, the more likely the lady is to get breast cancer. Ladies that use a typical American diet, high fat, high protein, go through puberty younger and go through menopause later. Ladies that use a starch-based diet, we call it a plant-based diet now. Starch is a dirty word, you know. You can't use that. It's almost politically incorrect. When I tell them I'm on a high-carb diet, and you should see people's faces. They look like, man, what is wrong with him? I go, yeah, when you study the biochemistry of the body, you are a rice burner. You are a carbohydrate machine. You go, well, then why does the ketogenic diet work so well? Because your metabolism is so messed up. If you were never messed up to start with, the diet wouldn't do you any good. Ketones are a byproduct. They're a waste product of the body that it urinates out. But if you make enough of them and you starve yourself enough, guess what? The body won't let you die. So thanks for your program. You're on the no-death program. Levels in the starch product, notice they go through puberty later and they go through menopause earlier, And over here we got relative biological levels of estrogen. The higher the estrogen levels, the more those organs will be affected by that. And overstimulating a tissue can cause abnormal growth. Age of menses for Japanese young ladies. Back in 1875, the average young lady did not start her period until she was 16 and a half years. By 1950, it had dropped to 15.2. What do you think caused that drop? When was World War II? When did America go to rebuild Japan? Don't play down the role. It's amazing. From a health standpoint, we didn't help them. From an economic standpoint, I hope we helped them. What took 75 years to drop 1.3 years now took 10 years. 15.2 to 13.9, another 1.3 drop. Another 10 years and a 1.4 drop. The study ended, you can see, in 74. And the comparable level of going through puberty for young ladies in Japan and the United States was the same. What do you think was the big difference? They had an atomic bomb. Well, that probably wasn't the major problem. Especially when you find out that some of the Japanese outlive us, even though they got some radiation. The point I'm getting at here is that hormones are directly related by dietary intake, male and female. Decline over the years in the United States, 1830, average age was 17, and it continues to drop. 2000. What do you think is the average age for a young lady now to go through puberty? You're close. When I say average, I'm talking about the middle. 10.7 years, so you got as many going before that as going after that. What happened to their childhood? When they should be playing with Barbie, they're capable of getting pregnant. Something's not right here, and it's not the child's fault. You know, when I grew up, my parents told me what to eat. I don't know, maybe your parents were the same way. And growing up on a small farm, the only snack I got is running out to the garden, pulling out a carrot, and running to the stream and washing it off. That was my snack. Yes, I grew up as a lacto-ovo-vegetarian. We raised gorgeous, we called them Rhode Island Reds. They were brown hens and laid great brown eggs, and I ate my share of them for sure. I wouldn't do it now, but that was growing up. And we either had a cow or a goat. And when Mom would pasteurize the milk, and she would typically burn it, I tell you what, milk wasn't high on my list at all. Because burnt milk is something to be avoided, not to be enjoyed. But she thought it needed to be pasteurized, and I'm glad she did. So now you know how I grew up. So by the time I make it to college, and they made your eggs out of rubber, it was no problem for me to be a vegan. It was a really easy switch, because there was nothing really that appetizing about other things. The Fred Hutchinson Cancer Institute in Seattle, Washington, what they were evaluating is that a woman's risk of breast cancer raises dramatically with her intake of meat, eggs, cheese, and butter. So they evaluated this. Those people who ate meat once a week or less, they set their breast cancer rate equal to 1. So ladies who ate meat 2 to 4 times a week, their breast cancer rate was 2.5 times that rate. And ladies that ate 7 days a week, basically daily, it was almost 4 times. I think there's a correlation. Breast cancer risk, eggs, once a week. If you eat eggs 2 to 4 times a week, it doubles. If you eat them daily, it almost triples. See, eggs are made for making baby chickens. I know I ate my share, and I probably would have argued with you when I was 15. But I've stopped arguing with you, and hopefully I've stopped arguing with myself. Butter and cheese, if you eat it once a week, that equal to 1. If you ate it 3 to 4 times a week, it's 3.5 times the risk. And if you eat it daily, your risk drops down. Please don't miss the point here. Dr. Collins says I have to eat cheese and butter every day to reduce my cancer risk. That's the kind of headlines you get on the Esquire magazine or something. What I'm saying is, please don't fall off the fence on the wrong side. And by the way, I don't know why the data came out this way. But I'm glad they told the truth, because I would be really tempted to stop my study right here and knock off that whole outside. I took a whole course, well, the book, of course. It was called How to Lie with Statistics. And until you know how to deal with statistics and what you're really reading, we can make graphs look incredibly terrible or incredibly mild, depending on a variety of factors. Obesity increases breast cancer risk. Premenopausal, the thin lady, we set their risk at 1. The overweight lady was twice, and the obese lady was 3 times before they went through menopause. After they went through menopause, the thin lady, her risk was equal to 1. After menopause here, 5, and obese, 12 times the risk. It is not about your figure, you look in the mirror, your diameters. Fat tissue causes problems for your immune system. The more I have, the more suppressed my immune system is. This is not against people who are overweight. This is called dynamics of physiology. And I have to watch what I eat just like you do. And I'm at the age now where I have to even watch it closer. You know, back in college, you could almost get away with eating stuff you shouldn't, and twice what you shouldn't. Volume-wise, I'm talking about. Fats promote cancer growth. Once again, we're looking at colon tumors here. I will grant you it is in rats, but let's see if we can learn something. 10% corn oil, the rats that had tumors in their colons was 36%. The rats that were fed 40% of their diet with corn oil had 64% of the group that had tumors. The rats that were fed lard had 17%. So what's the take-home message? Lard is preventive for bowel cancer, right? Please don't believe that. And don't say that Dr. Collins said that. When you go to 40% lard, you can see that it was about the same, and that's about what we eat in our diet. About 40% of our diet is fat. And the ketogenic diet even wants you higher than that. You see, I smile because it's almost too painful to cry all the time when I watch what people do. The take-home message is corn oil, even at room temperature, or even by the cook stove for grandma all winter long, as compared to putting her bottle of olive oil there. Colon cancer, it almost... Fat consumption across the bottom, and your various countries. Have you found United States? Have you found Italy? Have you found Thailand, etc.? The story is the same. The more fat, the more it affects your immune system. And when your immune system doesn't take care of that abnormal cell, which is a cancer cell, it can grow, develop, mature. Colon and rectal cancer, 90% of all cases occurs after age 50. So when you turn age 50, what do they want to do to you? Oh, this is so amazing. When I was a young child, I'd go to camp meetings. Our church would have camp meetings, and at age 8 and 9, you wanted to hear the incredible stories. And so they'd bring in these snakes that were 18 feet long. They weren't alive. The skin from the snakes that were 18 feet long. They could roll them up and put them in their suitcase. And they would tell us these incredible missionary stories. And any kid that had any kind of red blood running on their veins wanted to be a missionary. And then they'd tell us stories about what the witch doctors would do to people. They would take out rooster tongues and powder them, and you have to take that for a potion. And then they would do all kinds of these incredible things. And I take medicine, and at age 50, they want to put a pipe up your bottom, and they call that humane. Can you tell me, am I any better, or am I telling stories just like I heard when I was 8 years old? And then they don't want to be called witch doctor. They want to be called doctor. I'm going, folks, are we any less barbaric than what we do to people in our country than what I thought was going on in Africa and the jungle in Brazil? I'm starting to wonder about this. And as soon as you turn 50, what do they tell you? Here's your checklist, like you take your car in for 50,000 miles. You know, you got to change the oil, you change this fluid, change this, poke this, push that. I don't think we're doing any better. Because I happen to know that some people at age 50 are a lot healthier than others, but when you turn 50. 90% of all cases occur after age 50. Third leading cause of cancer in the United States. Second leading cause of cancer deaths. Average lifetime risk for developing this cancer is 6%. Well, if you take the whole lifespan, yes. Men and women are affected equally. Women are more likely to have right-sided colon adenomas. Right hand, right side. What does that tell you, ladies? Your ascending and transverse colons, where you get it. Now look at the rest of this. Men, obviously, are on the opposite side. Distributed evenly among racial groups, so it's not that. African Americans and Hispanics have a lower survival rate, meaning that they may have gotten more advanced, maybe they get less checked out. I don't know. My goal is that they don't have it at all. That's EA, if you know your acids, equals to a carbon, another hydrogen, So this is an unsaturated fat. This would commonly be an omega-3 fat that you think will be healthy for you, but even an omega-3 fat can go rancid. So I'll put my plug in for flaxseed. Do not buy ground flaxseed. You don't know how long it's been ground. It could be rancid by the time you get it. When we do the analysis on the flaxseed after it's ground, the oxidized products, the rancidity of it, increases to the point by day 7 that it's not healthy for you to eat. So please don't go over 7 days. People don't like to grind it every day. That's fine. By the way, putting it in a freezer is not going to help you. So when you buy the whole flax seed and grind it a couple times a week, some people feel like you've got to grind it and eat it right then. Well, it's not quite that radical, okay? But don't go over 7 days, okay? You will get less benefit than help. Okay, where am I at? These omega-3 fats I'm showing you here are healthy if they're not oxidized. They can become a problem to you if they are oxidized. Fat consumption and prostate cancer deaths. Once again, you see Japan, Philippines, you see United States. The story is the same. Over and over and over again. High fat, high cancer. High fat, high cancer. Breast, colon, prostate. High protein is another area. You know, I haven't made a lecture up on the ketogenic diet. I guess I'm hoping I don't have to. See, because I've seen this come around. This is the 3rd time in my career that's come through. When I first started my career, Dr. Atkins was the big thing. That was like, I may not see it come through 4 times, but this is the 3rd time that the ketogenic diet has come through. It seems to have some pretty good momentum. And by the way, you can get a doctor's MD behind any kind of supplement or anything, so that really doesn't prove anything anymore. Protein in the diet. So the ketogenic diet is what? High fat, high protein. Let me show you about the protein end of things. This is Dr. Colin Campbell, China Study 2. If you've read that book, the China Study, you're just going to see some excerpts from it here. Lab rats fed different protein diets and what happened to their cancer rate. The easiest way to reduce your cancer rate is eat a low-protein diet. That is the simplest way to reduce your cancer rate. And when I say low protein, I don't mean inadequate. Let's take a look. Rats that were fed 5% had a low rate of cancer growth. This is what Dr. Campbell found out. 20%, the rats fed 20%, had a high rate of cancer growth. He said, okay, maybe I've got something here. Maybe cancer, like fats, is a food that tends to stimulate or suppress the immune system, or both. There definitely is. You can get away. Here, I don't want to teach you how to cheat. You can get away with a higher protein diet if it's from vegetable source than you can from animal source. No doubt about that. These numbers are based on animal source protein, or at least a combination, but it wasn't purely one or the other. I may have a slide on here that actually differentiates those two. So, in this study, once again, Dr. Campbell, he said, okay, we're still in laboratory rats. We're going to actually inject them with a carcinogen. Now, the carcinogen he's using was aflatoxin, and he had experience with aflatoxins. Remember his early work in the Philippines when he went to the Philippines as a young researcher that said, my world problem, the reason I have so much cancer in the world is these people are not getting adequate protein. They've got to have protein. So his work in the Philippines said, no problem for people on the coast. We can feed them fish. By the way, they didn't have refrigeration significant to take care of the fish. So he said, well, what about the folks that live inland? What am I going to do? He says, we're going to teach them how to grow peanuts. Peanuts in a warm climate, in a humid climate, are much more susceptible to molding. That's the aflatoxin. So he used that same aflatoxin that can cause liver cancer on his rats here. It's a little bit of brief on where he got it. Injected a high dose of a carcinogen, aflatoxin, fed them a low-protein diet, and they developed a low response to cancer. Even after they'd been injected with a cancer-causing agent, they had a low response to it. Injected rats with a low dose, remember this is a high dose, a low dose of a carcinogen on a high-protein diet, and they developed a much higher response. So he's got two things going on here. Even if I inject the rats with a cancer-causing agent on a low-protein diet, I get less of a response, even though I'm trying to give them cancer. If I give them just a very minor amount of a cancer-causing agent on a high-protein diet, it just goes much more extensive. So what was his conclusion? His conclusion was, and I think he's being generous, by the way, his conclusion was that adequate protein for good body growth is 10%. Well, what about when your body is already grown? What about when you're an adult? Do you realize your highest time for needing protein is when you were born to the first year? That's your highest protein requirement that you'll ever have in your whole life. And it continues to go down. We make it through our teenage years when usually you reach your adult height, and from there on, your protein requirement continues to get less. Unfortunately, we think we want to eat more. So, what he showed here is foci development, in other words, tumor sites. And where were all these tumor sites? And he said, okay, if I look at my rats, by the way, these are still rat studies, if I look at my rats and I'm looking for how many tumors they have on how much protein I give them, I find that at 4% protein, very few rats, 6%, 8%, 10%. When I jump between 10% to 12, I go up almost 2.5 times in my rats. If I go to 14%, I go into almost 70%. When I hit 20% of protein in my diet, I'm running close to 90% have tumors in that group. So he says, okay, I was wrong. I went to the Philippines to try to help out a population to reduce their cancer rate. And what was I doing? I was increasing their cancer rate. And then he would study another population in India, and he was reading their research on that, and guess what he found out? The people with the highest cancer rate in India were the people who weren't starving. The people on the highest protein had the highest cancer rate. So let's learn a lesson. Comparison of high-protein diets. Walter Longo, PhD, said high-protein diet, greater than 20% of the calories, and we just showed you the rat studies, now we're going to humans now. There was a 74% overall mortality, increase in overall mortality in 50 to 65-year-old people. So we see the mortality rate, death rate going up. Here's an interesting, really interesting for me, 28% reduction in overall mortality if you're over 65. So does that mean that when I turn 65, I need to eat more protein? Well, let's look at the side benefit to get this thing here. The small print is right here. The people on 20% of their calories from protein had a 4-fold risk of dying from cancer in the 50 to 65-year-old age group. 4-fold, that would be 400% compared to 28%. Now let's go to the next group. had a 500%, five-fold increase of dying from diabetes of all ages. So if I increase my protein, the research said I get a minimal benefit if I'm over 65, but look at what I have a problem with. I have a 400% increase of cancer and a 500% increase of diabetes. I don't like the trade-off. I'm going to stay with my lower protein over age 65. Otherwise, I'm taking too big a risk. Moderate protein, 10 or 20%, and low protein. Here's what you're asking me. The relationship he saw with a high-protein diet, over 20% of the calories, and mortality of the group that he was studying, relationship disappeared if eating only plant protein. So what's the take-home message? Eat plant protein, number one. Number two, plant protein does not have the same effect on your immune system in causing cancer as animal protein. Now let's talk about the body. What does the body want? Okay, I'm looking at cancer here. I try to keep the broad picture. If I feed you too much, even plant protein, I can still cause an overwork of your kidneys, an overwork of your liver, and ladies, you have to worry about before we men do, osteoporosis. The higher the protein, I cause more of an acid effect on the body, and I still have that problem. But when it comes to cancer, if you're going to mess up, eat your broccoli, not your steak. Like we say, beat the cow to the garden, you know. Biology of proteins, animal proteins, increase intake, increase disease. They're high in saturated fat, there's no fiber, they're low in antioxidant. Well, that makes sense. The cow had to have his. And it's low in vitamins. Plant-based proteins, increase intake, no disease. They have low fats, but the fats that are there are not saturated. They're poly and monounsaturated. High in density, high in, dietary fiber, high in antioxidants, high in vitamins. The immune system responds to 2 amino acids. If you deprive the immune system from tyrosine and phenylalanine, we'll look at the chart next, a diet that's low in those 2 amino acids, it seems to cause a stimulation of 3 basic cell types that defend yourself from cancer. One is helper cells, cytotoxic cells, that gives it away, kills cells, and natural killer cells. So over a 28-day period, with people on these 2 amino acids, we saw their immune system go up. When they went back on the typical American diet, we saw their immune system drop. This one continued to climb, and after another 4 weeks, it went down too. It just had a residual effect. You want to know what foods are high in that? Plant foods, from apples to applesauce to cabbage to collard greens to mustard. Till we get to lentils, I'll tell you, don't worry about it. This doesn't mean that lentils are bad. What it means is that legumes have a little more of this protein. So obviously legumes are not your dominant food. But I want you to look at the next list of the 2 amino acids. 1 egg, not a 3-egg omelet, 1 egg has over 300 and 250 plus. 1 glass of milk, 388 and 388. It says whole milk there. Guess what? Whether it's skim milk, whether it's whole milk, or whether it's 2%, does that change the protein content? No, it's all the same. So you say, well, I use low-fat this. Crab, almost 800 and over 600. Tuna, that healthy food, 900 and 800. Beef steak, 1,000 and 800 plus. And chicken, over 1,100 and 960. Now I've got a question for you. Why was I sent out of school telling people to eat more chicken and fish to help out their heart disease? Because that's the way I was trained. Guess what? If I would have seen the handwriting on the wall, here's heart disease. That's what I was trained in. That was the biggie. Sick 'em, boys. Take care of this one, you know. But cancer was coming up over the left shoulder, and we didn't even see it. There are things that we can do that may lower your cholesterol level. They may truly help the cholesterol level and give you cancer. How do you like that? See what I'm saying? Whatever treatment you take on has to be consistent with your heart disease, whether diabetes, whether cancer. Otherwise, when we have inconsistent treatment, we were actually, by our recommendations, promoting a suppression of the immune system and increasing people's cancer risk. Colon cancer and meal frequency. How often do you eat? How often do you think you should eat? Eating 2 or less meals a day, the risk of colon cancer is 1, rectal, and colon is 1. Eating 3 meals a day, it went up almost doubled. Eating 4 meals a day, it went up a little more. Why does meal frequency have anything to do with your colon? Well, guess what? That's where it all goes. The more frequently you eat, the more colon cancer is in that group of people. Now, what do we recommend? I mean, we start kids out. What do? Well, hopefully they got breakfast. Most kids go to school without it. So they get a snack when they get there. They get to eat at 11, and they at least get one more snack before they're done. I mean, we're setting a whole population of young people up on between 4 to 6 meals a day. In fact, you've got some people that advocate that. 6 meals a day. I'm saying, what are you doing? Maybe they do need all those colonoscopies. No, they don't. That is not the answer. Colonoscopies don't prevent disease. They really don't. The best they can do is identify something. How about going to bed? Sleep-deprived people have more cancer. Now, this really hurts, doesn't it? Yes, sometimes I get too busy to go to bed. Does that happen to any of you? But I am not against sleep. Sleep is when your body rebuilds, including your immune system. The top part of this deals with the amount that you eat. Men who sleep 4 hours a night ate 22% more calories. Maybe you're not really tired because you aren't getting food. Maybe you're tired because you need to sleep. The next study talks about insulin resistance. And anything that causes insulin resistance increases your risk of cancer. You go, I thought that was only about diabetes. No. Anything that increases insulin resistance increases cancer. The last one gets my attention. Insulin resistance can lead to heart disease, diabetes, and possibly breast cancer. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition and Clinical Endocrinology. Cancers of the skin. Answer me this question. Why do people in Ecuador have less skin cancer that live on the equator than we do here in North Carolina? If sun is the problem, why don't they have more cancer than we do? The fact is, they don't have more cancer, and we do, and the factor is the sun can be a component, but it's not the major component. Look at this. A diet with 21% fat or less, the incidence or number of lesions, skin cancers, was 3. The average American diet at 39% of the calories from fat, the incidence was 10. Sun can cause damage to the skin. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is the major problem is you can give a person a low-fat diet and a lot of sun and cause less cancer than a high-fat diet and a little bit of sun. So the major component is not the sun. It's how many hot dogs you ate when you were at the beach. You see the problem here? By the way, if you want to get cured of eating hot dogs, go to a slaughterhouse. They cured me really quick. I don't know why they did this to kids. It would probably be politically incorrect now. One of our field trips from church school was going to a slaughterhouse. Oh, man. That's almost criminal. And they showed me how they made the hot dogs. It'll cure you for life. I guarantee it. You know? It's everything that's left over, including a few extra flies, and whatever's on the ground, all goes in the bin. I'm going, carrots are good, folks. That's awesome. Give me a carrot. Of course, I was a veggie kid anyway. That's what my dad used to say. They use everything on that pig except for the squeal. Anyway, chewing the fat. This is a fun slide. The grams of fat are on this side, 50 grams per serving we're talking about here, all the way up to almost 100. You go to the movie theater and you buy your popcorn, okay? This is a small bucket, 50 grams. And by the way, it's not in the popcorn. It's what we put on top of the popcorn. Go to Kentucky Fried, the Colonel. You know what? I go to Costa Rica. I'm on the main street, San Jose, and guess what I find? McDonald's, the Colonel, even sitting there out front on a white bench. Can you believe it? They had a guy, the Colonel was in front. And then I found Pizza Hut. In fact, down there they give me directions. Go to the Pizza Hut and make a left. Folks, it's all over the world, and it makes me upset because those dear people make about 10%, maybe 18% of what you make here. Guess what their price on the hamburger is down there? The same as it is here. Now you do the math. That means they're spending 5 times of what their budget is on that food item compared to what you spend here. And they're lined up. I'm going, you feel like shouting out, don't be American. It's a bummer, you know. I'm not anti-America. I'm anti what they do to these people. You know, they line up for their cancer burgers. You know, it really bugs me. Okay, 62 grams eggplant parmesan. I'm sorry, I'm losing my take-home message. 42 pounds of jelly beans. By the way, I'm not recommending this, okay? 500 carrots have the same amount of fat as your one visit to the theater. Okay, General Tso's, or whoever this guy is, potatoes with rice, 3 McDonald's quarter pounders, 5 pounds of white turkey meat, or 2,950 radishes. You thought I couldn't fill you up. Eggplant parmesan, 4 Snickers bars, 5.5 egg rolls, 310 cups of raw spinach. This chimichango, whoever this platter, you can tell I don't eat this stuff. What is it? All right, thank you. 9.5 glazed donuts, Dunkin' Donuts, 86 pieces of Wonder Bread, 172 apples. After you finish your 172 apples, I don't have to worry about what you want to eat next. Can you believe that? How about this one? Alfredo, 5 Hostess cherry pies, 31 pieces of bacon, 485 potatoes. I can feed you a potato and a half every day for the whole year for your one meal at the restaurant. And you get the same amount of fat. Kind of blows you away, doesn't it? You go, whoa. I got an oil change, a grease job, and it took more than 10 minutes. Can you believe what we eat? I mean, here's the amazing part. The amazing part is not how high the cancer rate is. The real amazing part is how low it is for what we do to ourselves. That's the real amazing thing. This body is so incredible, it even puts up with all our nonsense. That's the real incredible thing to me. Meat and breast cancer, those poor people that get nothing to eat but pinto beans and rice, those poor people. They're low socioeconomic. They eat meat almost never, rarely, maybe on Thanksgiving. Guess what? They just missed out on breast cancer. The high socioeconomic, eating meat daily. The wealth of a country should be in its health, not in the restaurant trade. Cancer mortality, we wanted to look at 2 populations. We're trying to figure out why the Adventist Health Study, why their cancer rate is lower than the general population. So we picked another population, the Mormon population, because Mormons in general don't smoke, but they eat a lot more red meat than the California Adventist population. So we said, let's just do some comparing here. So the general population, that was 100%. Mormon women have 83% of the expected cancer death rate. So that's a 17% decrease. Mormon men have 68%, or a 32% decrease, the same as Adventist women, and Adventist men have 50% of the death rate of the Mormon population, of the general population. You know, when you go to seminars and they start talking about change in cancer death rates, it makes all kinds of sense. Why? That the less animal products you eat, the less problem you have. Eating meat and poultry and fish increases ovarian cancer. Lacto-ovo, eggs and milk, 15.9. meat 1 to 3 times per week, 18, and meat 4 times or more, 26. Obesity, obviously, the risk of death from cancer goes up the more weight I carry around. Your immune system can't handle it. We're going to stop here, and we're going to open for questions. But this RAVE program, and if you like to go online, ravediet.com, is they are living by, or so to speak, recommending the rules that we're talking about here. It's a plant-based diet. There is no oil in it. And the back of the book has got a bunch of recipes so you don't think you have to eat cardboard for the rest of your life. And you start going through it all, and it's well worth your time. And they have some DVDs on the site. They're not a rip-off site. They'll charge you, I don't know, $11 to $13 for their book, so they're making a living, but they're not charging you $100 for this program or something. Highly recommend it. Some of you have already gone there, because this is one of my pet things. So the R is no refined foods. Technically, you don't need anything else in your program. Think about if you eat no refined foods. Animals, everything an animal does is refined, because the animal had to eat it before you got it, and he had to eat the broccoli before I get it, so that's refined. The second thing is avoid animal products. Obviously, we're working on that. V is the hardest ones. If you think that this is easier, whether you're a vegan or whether you aren't, this gets to us all. Because we have this abnormal, unusual, and basically raised right in your genes so much. When it comes to V, avoid vegetable oils. People think that, Collins has just lost one of his marbles. Maybe more, I don't know. But this is a therapeutic diet. I have no way, and I have seen no other program to reverse heart disease, to help turn a cancer patient around, to help to turn my diabetics around. There just isn't any other way to accomplish the task. There are modifications. There are some people who make some changes and do better. So this is a therapeutic regime. If you need the therapeutic regime, this is the best there is. If you don't need it, then you should go and say, listen, I can cut back. I'm healthy. I want to stay that way. Here's the research we don't have. We know what it takes to turn people around. But what we don't know is if every day of my life I limited my fat intake to 1 teaspoon of olive oil, whether I wanted to put it on the pan and make my pancakes, or what, if I limited to that every day of my life, would I be healthy? We don't have that research. What we have is what it takes to turn someone around who hasn't lived that way. So keep that in the equation for what you're trying to accomplish here. And by the way, when I say low fat and no oil, I don't mean no fat diet. God didn't make a no fat diet. There's nothing in God's kingdom that has no fat in. If you can name one, I'll be glad to address it. Apples have fat. If you can believe it, broccoli is about 6% fat. So when you have a no-fat food, it's something that man made, not God. Olives, you go, well, that was easy. They make olive oil out of those. That's got fat. Avocados, that's easy. And nuts, that's easy. But most people don't think about broccoli have fat in it, because we wouldn't even think about it. In fact, people are so confused on their nutrition that they think broccoli can be eaten on a low-carb diet. And broccoli is incredible. It's over 50% carb. It's just how you think of carbs. When I say carbs, I don't mean white sugar. I mean the components in the food. Okay, Carl got a microphone, and we would appreciate if you would raise your hand if you have a question. And we'll take questions for 10 minutes, then we'll take a break for another 10 minutes, and then we'll give you the... I'm good at presenting a problem, aren't I? The next one's going to be on the solution to it also. See, you never want someone to leave a meeting depressed. You want them to leave feeling like, I can do it. Okay. Well, I guess we've done a good job, Carl. Maybe you're tired of sitting. Is that it? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's try to get back here at 25-2. And there's water available. There will be handouts available. And then we'll get to talk about the solution and what research is